Here are the 10 most dangerous places on Earth. Number 10, Leighton Haas, Cameroon. On 1986, 21st of August, a limnic eruption at Leighton Haas in northwestern Cameroon killed 1,746 people and 3,500 livestock. The eruption triggered the sudden release of about 100,000 to 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. The gas cloud initially rose at nearly 100 kilometers per hour, and then being heavier than air, descended onto nearby villages, suffocating people and livestock. Within 25 kilometers of the lake, a degassing system has since been installed at the lake, with the aim of reducing the concentration of carbon dioxide in the waters and therefore the risk of further eruptions. Along with the Lake Monéan disaster 2 years earlier, it is one of only 2 recorded limnic eruptions in history. What triggered the catastrophic outgassing is not known. Most geologists suspect a landslide, but some believe that a small volcanic eruption may have occurred on the bed of the lake. A third possibility is that cool rainwater falling on one side of the lake triggered the overturn. Others still believe there was a small earthquake, but because witnesses did not report feeling any tremors on the morning of the disaster, this hypothesis is unlikely. The event resulted in the supersaturated deep water rapidly mixing with the upper layers of the lake, where the reduced pressure allowed the stored carbon dioxide to effervesce out of solution. Further research found that carbon dioxide had built up under high pressure in Leighton Haas, as it had 2 years earlier at another Cameroonian volcanic lake about 60 miles to the southeast, Lake Monéan, killing 37 people. A landslide into the lake may have caused the gas to be released from the cooler depths of the lake. A volcanic eruption under the lake or even a minor earthquake might also have been the cause. The result was that the carbon dioxide burst out of the lake and into the air, poisoning those in its path and then dispersing. The usual level of carbon dioxide in the air is much less than 0.1%, but near Leighton Haas levels may have reached 10%. Number 9, Bikini Atoll. Bikini Atoll, known as Eskfskolts Atoll between the 19th century and 1946, is a coral reef in the Marshall Islands consisting of 23 islands surrounding a 229.4 square mile central lagoon. The atoll is at the northern end of the Raleigh chain, approximately 530 miles northwest of the capital Majuro. After the Second World War, the atoll was chosen by the United States as a nuclear weapon testing site. It would be the site of only the 4th nuclear bomb detonation and would go on to be the site of many more tests. The people that lived on Bikini, all 167 of the atoll's inhabitants, agreed to relocate after being informed of the plan to test then new nuclear weapons of great importance to humankind, though it is sometimes considered a forced relocation. In 1946 they moved to Rongerik, a small island east of Bikini Atoll, but it turned out to have inadequate resources to support the population. The islanders began experiencing starvation by early 1948, and they were moved again, this time to Kwajalein Atoll. The United States used the islands and lagoon as the site of 23 nuclear tests until 1958, when it turned out nuclear weapons were much more dangerous and toxic than anything ever imagined. To this day, the Bikini Islanders have not been able to return home due to nuclear contamination. There are some signs of recovery as the amount of radiation slowly decreases due to half-life. The atoll is also threatened by rising sea levels. In 1970, about 200 residents were returned to their home island by the U.S. government. But scientists found dangerously high levels of strontium-90 in well water in May of 1978, and the residents' bodies were carrying abnormally high concentrations of cesium-137. They were evacuated again in 1980. The atoll is occasionally visited today by divers and a few scientists, and it is occupied by a handful of caretakers. The people of the atoll, which now number in the thousands, have spread out to other Marshallese islands in the United States. A multi-million-dollar trust fund, which had been supporting services for many Bikini since the 1980s, was drained in the late 2010s. In the 21st century, the atoll is noted as a historic site, but one where humankind learned more about the long-term dangers of nuclear weapon use. It is noted as an enclave of nature, and the radiation has decreased enough that tourism is possible. However, the lingering radioactive contamination make it unfit for what was expected to be short-term evacuation, especially it's not recommended to eat plants or wildlife. The name Bikini, the name of popular a bathing suit, originates from the name of this atoll, which is from the Marshallese language, but reflecting some German influence. Although the bikini covers nipples, this was actually social acceptable and modest Marshall Island culture at that time. Number 8. Death Valley, California. Death Valley is a desert valley in eastern California, in the northern Mojave Desert, bordering the Great Basin Desert. It is thought to be the hottest place on Earth during summer. Death Valley is home to the Timbisha tribe of Native Americans, formerly known as the Panamint Shoshone, who have inhabited the valley for at least the past millennium. Death Valley's Badwater Basin is the point of lowest elevation in North America, at 282 feet below sea level. On the afternoon of July 10, 1913, the United States Weather Bureau recorded a high temperature of 134 degrees Fahrenheit, 56.7 degrees Celsius, at Furnace Creek in Death Valley, which stands as the highest ambient air temperature ever recorded on the surface of the Earth. This reading, however, and several others taken in that period are disputed by some modern experts. A group of European Americans pioneers lost here in the winter of 1849 to 1850, while looking for a shortcut to the gold fields of California, gave Death Valley its grim name. Although only one of the group members died here, they all assumed that the valley would be their grave. Located on the border of California and Nevada, Death Valley National Park was designated in 1933, and is home to one of the world's strangest phenomena, rocks that move along the desert ground with no gravitational cause. Known as sailing stones, the rocks vary in size from a few ounces to hundreds of pounds. Though no one has ever seen them actually move in person, the trails left behind the stones and periodic changes in their location make it clear that they do. Number 7. Lake Natron, Tanzania. Lake Natron is a salt or alkaline lake located in North Ngorongoro district of Arusha region in Tanzania at the border with Kenya. It is in the Gregory Rift, which is the eastern branch of the East African Rift. The lake is within the Lake Natron Basin, a Ramsar Site wetland of international significance. It is the only regular breeding area for Africa's lesser flamingos, although this habitat is not protected and is under threat from planned development projects. While there are no known human deaths directly caused by the waters of Lake Natron, it is certainly a dangerous environment for people. In 2007, a helicopter filled with a group of wildlife photographers crashed into the lake while hovering too low to the surface. The accident left the pilot with a broken leg and a passenger with a broken hip. However, the crew of 9 were pulled from the wreckage by the local Maasai and everyone survived. One of the photographers stated that the toxic water burned his eyes and blurred his vision. Lake Natron has gained a reputation for its petrifying effect on animals that die in its waters. The high levels of sodium bicarbonate can lead to the calcification of birds and other animals. Interestingly, sodium bicarbonate was historically used by Egyptians for mummification. It has been reported that the lake turns animals into stone. However, the animals did not die because they came into contact with the lake's water. The animals died in the water and their carcasses were preserved by the chemicals in the water, making them salty statues. Lake Natron received media attention when photographer Nick Brandt published stark images of its dead animals in a book titled Across the Ravaged Land, Abrams Books, 2013. In the book, Brandt wrote, "I took these creatures as I found them on the shoreline, and then placed them in living positions, bringing them back to life, as it were." While the lake's alkalinity is hostile for most forms of life, certain types of algae and microorganisms have adapted to high saline conditions. There are also alkaline tilapias that live in the waters at the edges of the hot spring inlets, which is less salty. The lake is home to 2.5 million flamingos, one of the highest concentrations in East Africa. Flamingos are well suited for survival in this environment. They have tough skin and scales on their legs that prevent burns, and they have glands in their head that remove salt from the water, draining it out from their nasal cavity. Number 6. The Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, is an urban legend focused on a loosely defined region in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean where a number of aircraft and ships are said to have disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The idea of the area as uniquely prone to disappearances arose in the mid-20th century, but most reputable sources dismiss the idea that there is any mystery. The earliest suggestion of unusual disappearances in the Bermuda area appeared in an article written by Edward Van Winkle Jones of the Miami Herald that was distributed by the Associated Press and appeared in various American newspapers on 17 September 1950. 2 years later, Fate magazine published "See Mystery at Our Back Door," a short article by George X. Sand that was the first to lay out the now familiar triangular area where the losses took place. Sand recounted the loss of several planes and ships since World War II. The disappearance of Sandra, a tramp steamer. The 1945 December loss of Flight 19, a group of 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers on a training mission. The 1948 January disappearance of Star Tiger, a British South American Airways passenger airplane. The 1948 March disappearance of a fishing skiff with 3 men, including jockey Albert Snyder. The 1948 December disappearance of an airborne transport DC-3 charter flight en route from Puerto Rico to Miami. And the 1949 January disappearance of Star Ariel, another BSAA passenger airplane. Bermuda Triangle, section of the North Atlantic Ocean off North America in which more than 50 ships and 20 airplanes are said to have mysteriously disappeared. The area, whose boundaries are not universally agreed upon, has a triangular shape that reaches approximately from the Atlantic coast of Florida to Bermuda to the islands known as the Greater Antilles. Reports of unexplained occurrences in the region date to the mid-19th century. Some ships were discovered completely abandoned for no apparent reason. Others transmitted no distress signals and were never seen or heard from again. Aircraft have been reported and then vanished, and rescue missions are said to have vanished when flying in the area. However, wreckage has not been found, and some of the theories advanced to explain the repeated mysteries have been fanciful. Number 5. Caracas, Venezuela. Caracas, CCS, is the capital and largest city of Venezuela, and the center of the metropolitan region of Caracas, or Greater Caracas. Caracas is located along the Guaire River in the northern part of the country, within the Caracas Valley of the Venezuelan coastal mountain range, Cordillera de la Costa. Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía, Caracas, is dangerous. Incidents of violent crime occur frequently, both inside the facilities and in the surrounding areas. Kidnappers and armed robbers have targeted foreigners, who are assumed to be holding large amounts of foreign currency. Criminals often approach tourists at the airport and offer to exchange money. They may also pose as taxi drivers. Venezuela's capital region, consisting mainly of the city of Caracas, registered a homicide rate of 90 per 100,000 in 2022, according to the Venezuelan Violence Observatory. A lack of reliable government statistics tenders this account questionable. This was more than double the national rate of 40 per 100,000 for that year. This concentration of violence is primarily fueled by battles between Venezuelan security forces and the capital's many criminal gangs that run extortion, micro-trafficking, and kidnapping in Caracas neighborhoods. Number 4. Danakil Desert, East Africa. The Danakil Desert, or Afar Desert, is a desert in northeast Ethiopia, southern Eritrea, and northwestern Djibouti. Situated in the Afar Triangle, it stretches across 136,956 square kilometers of arid terrain. It is inhabited by a few Afar, who engage in salt mining. The area is known for its volcanoes and extreme heat, with daytime temperatures surpassing 50 degrees Celsius. Less than 25 millimeters of rainfall occurs each year. The Danakil Desert is one of the lowest and hottest places on Earth. The Danakil Desert, dubbed as one of the most alien places on Earth, is a geological enthrallment formed by the divergence of 3 tectonic plates of continents in the Horn of Africa. The phenomenon land feature is jointly owned by Eritrea and Djibouti, although the predominant part of the Afar Triangle resides in Ethiopia. The unceasingly drifting apart process, which enforced the constant engulfing of a low-lying land by the Red Sea, eventually gave birth to the present-day spellbinding Danakil Desert, which is part of the Great Rift Valley of East Africa. The Danakil Depression is situated in the northeastern part of the country, within the Afar region. Its daily maximum temperature rises up to 50 degrees Celsius, which is extremely unbearable for newcomers. Its northern extremes, which reaches -116 meters below sea level, makes it one of the lowest places on planet Earth. Danakil Desert is tectonically active and mysteriously enchanting, dubbed by many as an otherworldly place. The enchanting Danakil is home to plenty of dormant and active volcanoes, thrilling semi-permanent and oldest lava lake, expansive salt flats, snowy saline lake, colorful sulfur springs, various hot springs, and many more. This harsh environment is inhabited by the resilient and proud pastoralist people of Afar. The Afar region is a traditional seat of sultans, and its people are traditionally nomadic, and merchants, and exotically beautified with their own unique language and culture. Number 3, North Sentinel Island, India. North Sentinel Island is one of the Andaman Islands, an Indian archipelago in the Bay of Bengal, which also includes South Sentinel Island. The island is a protected area of India. It is home to the Sentinelese, an indigenous tribe in voluntary isolation who have defended, often by force, their protected isolation from the outside world. The island is about 8 kilometers long and 7 kilometers wide, and its area is approximately 60 square kilometers. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Regulation, 1956 prohibits travel to the island, and any approach closer than 5 nautical miles, in order to protect the remaining tribal community from mainland infectious diseases against which they likely have no acquired immunity. The area is patrolled by the Indian Navy. Nominally, the island belongs to the South Andaman Administrative District, part of the Indian Union Territory of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. In practice, Indian authorities recognize the islanders' desire to be left alone, restricting outsiders to remote monitoring, by boat and sometimes air, from a reasonably safe distance. The Indian government will not prosecute the Sentinelese for killing people in the event that an outsider ventures ashore. In 2018, the Government of India excluded 29 islands including North Sentinel from the Restricted Area Permit (RAP) regime, in a major effort to boost tourism. In November 2018, the government's Home Ministry stated that the relaxation of the prohibition on visitations was intended to allow researchers and anthropologists, with pre-approved clearance, to finally visit the Sentinel Islands. The Sentinelese have repeatedly attacked approaching vessels, whether the boats were intentionally visiting the island or simply ran aground on the surrounding coral reef. The islanders have been observed shooting arrows at boats, as well as at low-flying helicopters. Such attacks have resulted in injury and death. In 2006, islanders killed 2 fishermen whose boat had drifted ashore, and in 2018 an American Christian missionary, 26-year-old John Chow, was killed after he illegally attempted to make contact with the islanders 3 separate times and paid local fishermen to transport him to the island. Number 2, Damascus, Syria. Geneva. More than 13 years after Syria erupted into civil war, the United Nations says the country has become a more dangerous place for civilians, noting that the oppressive government of President Bashir al-Assad, that sparked the flames of conflict, remains in power and continues to escalate hostilities on multiple fronts. The Syria crisis remains one of the most deadly to civilians in the world. Hostilities continue to plague various parts of Syria and have recently seen a sharp spike, particularly in the north, said Adam Abdel-Mawla, resident and humanitarian coordinator for Syria, at a news conference in Geneva Friday. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, says 454 civilians, including 88 women and 115 children, were killed in the first 10 months of 2023 because of the conflict. Those casualties are the latest manifestation of the toll taken by the war on Syria's population. The UN estimates that since the start of the war on March 15, 2011, 300,000 people have been killed, more than 12 million have been displaced, 6.8 million inside Syria and 5.4 million as refugees in 5 neighboring countries. Speaking from the capital, Damascus, Abdul Mawla said, "Today, a staggering 16.7 million people require some form of humanitarian assistance in Syria," noting that nearly 13 million people are suffering from acute hunger. He said the economy is in freefall, causing prices for the most basic commodities to soar. "We hear daily how people are forced to forego meals, pull their children from school so they can help support the family, or mothers choosing to skip their medications in order to feed their children. This is unconscionable." While man-made disasters are largely responsible for the catastrophic situation facing Syria's civilian population, natural disasters and climate shocks have exacerbated the distress. OCHA says that the devastating earthquake in February 2023 in northern Syria killed some 6,000 people and injured more than 12,800, increasing the strain on services, causing displacement, and inflicting widespread damage, adding that many families lost their main breadwinner at a time when the economic situation was already dire. OCHA says 2 days of heavy flooding last week affected more than 15,700 people at several displacement camps in Idlib and northern Aleppo. It says that more than 3,300 family tents have been damaged and 500 destroyed in more than 100 flooding incidents in northwest Syria this year. Number 1, Snake Island, Brazil. Ilha de Queimada Grande, more commonly referred to as Snake Island, is an island off the coast of Brazil in the Atlantic Ocean. The island became famous for its abundant snakes, hence the name Snake Island. It is administered as part of the municipality of Itanhaém in the state of São Paulo. The island is small, with an area of only 43 hectares, and has a temperate climate. Its terrain varies from bare rock to rainforest. The island is the only natural home of the critically endangered, venomous Bothrops insularis, golden lancehead pit viper, which has a diet of birds. The snakes became trapped on the island thousands of years ago following the end of the last ice age when rising ocean levels disconnected the island from the mainland. The ensuing evolutionary pressure allowed the snakes to adapt to their new environment, increasing rapidly in population and rendering the island dangerous to public visitation. Queimada Grande is closed to the public for the protection of both people and snakes. Access is available only to the Brazilian Navy and selected researchers vetted by the Chico Mendes Institute for Biodiversity Conservation, the Brazilian Federal Conservation Unit.